North Korea, officially known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, is one of the most isolated, mysterious, and controversial nations in the world. To the outside world, it is a country of stark contrasts, a regime that promotes a cult of personality around its leadership, while maintaining one of the most brutal, authoritarian regimes in existence. From its nuclear weapons development to its harsh punishment of dissent, North Korea is often viewed through a lens of fear and suspicion by both its neighbors and global leaders. The regime's reach is vast, its power concentrated in the hands of the Kim family, which has ruled the country for over 70 years. With the advent of Kim Jong-un as the current leader, many wonder whether the country is heading towards greater isolation or if there will ever be a shift in its policies toward global integration. In this deep dive, we will explore the horrific realities of life within North Korea, the historical context that led to its creation, and why its leadership continues to be feared by leaders around the world. The story of North Korea begins in the aftermath of World War II. Korea, which had been under Japanese colonial rule for 35 years, was liberated with Japan's defeat in 1945. The country, however, was left in ruins, its infrastructure decimated, and its people battered by years of exploitation and warfare. The United States and the Soviet Union were the two major powers in the Pacific following the defeat of Japan, and both were eager to extend their influence over the Korean peninsula. In the wake of Japan's surrender, the Allies agreed to divide Korea along the 38th parallel, with the Soviet Union occupying the northern half and the United States occupying the southern half. This division, meant to be temporary, quickly became a symbol of the ideological and geopolitical rift between the communist and capitalist worlds, leading to the Cold War. In the north, Soviet forces installed Kim Il-sung, a young and ambitious communist revolutionary who had been a part of the anti-Japanese resistance in Manchuria. Backed by the Soviet Union, Kim Il-sung's political ideology was rooted in the ideas of Marxism-Leninism, with a vision of a unified, socialist Korea under communist rule. The creation of two separate states on the peninsula, one communist in the north and one capitalist in the south, was a catalyst for escalating tensions that led to the Korean War. In the south, Syngman Rhee, a staunch anti-communist, was supported by the United States, and in 1948, the Republic of Korea, South Korea, was officially established. This division planted the seeds for a bitter ideological and military confrontation that would soon erupt in the Korean War. The Korean War, which broke out in June 1950, was a direct result of the tension between the communist North and the capitalist South. Kim Il-sung, with the support of the Soviet Union and China, launched an invasion of South Korea in an effort to unify the peninsula under communist rule. The United States, under the banner of the United Nations, quickly came to the aid of South Korea, leading to a brutal conflict that would last until 1953. The war saw some of the most horrific fighting in the Cold War era, with devastating consequences for both sides. The conflict resulted in millions of casualties, both military and civilian, and led to widespread destruction across the Korean peninsula. The United States and its allies fought fiercely to repel the North Korean invasion, while China and the Soviet Union provided substantial support to Kim Il-sung's regime. The war ended in 1953 with an armistice agreement, which established the Korean Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, along the 38th parallel, effectively splitting the peninsula into two hostile states. However, no peace treaty was signed, and the Korean War remains officially unresolved to this day. The division of the peninsula was solidified, with North Korea under Kim Il-sung's control and South Korea firmly aligned with the United States and its capitalist ideals. In the aftermath of the war, North Korea was left in ruin. The country had suffered heavy bombing by US forces, which devastated cities and infrastructure. Despite this, Kim Il-sung embarked on a policy of rebuilding the nation, driven by the ideology of Juche, or self-reliance. The Soviet Union provided significant aid to North Korea during this time, which allowed the country to slowly recover from the war's ravages. Kim Il-sung utilized this rebuilding period to consolidate his power and strengthen his regime, turning North Korea into a fully fledged totalitarian state. Kim Il-sung's rule, which lasted from 1948 until his death in 1994, was marked by a relentless pursuit of power and control. Early on, Kim established a strong personality cult, portraying himself as the great leader and the father of the nation. His image was ubiquitous. Portraits of him were displayed in every home, school, and public building, and his name was constantly invoked in state propaganda. The regime, under Kim Il-sung's leadership, took a strict approach to governance, with the state asserting total control over every aspect of life. The political system was grounded in the principles of Juche, which emphasized independence from foreign powers and self-sufficiency in all areas, including the economy, military, and politics. The country's economy was central to Kim Il-sung's vision of self-reliance, with state-run collectivist farming and nationalized industries. Kim Il-sung's grip on power was solidified through purges of perceived rivals within the Communist Party. The regime suppressed any form of dissent with an iron fist. Political opponents were either executed or sent to one of the country's notorious labor camps. Family members of dissenters were also punished, in a practice known as guilt by association, which ensured that no one dared to challenge the leadership. Furthermore, the state's propaganda machine was state-of-the-art, ensuring that Kim Il-sung's image as the omnipotent, benevolent leader was ingrained in the minds of every North Korean citizen. His reign marked the beginning of a tradition of absolute control, which continues under his descendants. One of Kim Il-sung's most significant and long-lasting contributions to the regime's survival was the development of North Korea's nuclear weapons program. Kim viewed nuclear weapons as a means of ensuring the country's survival against external threats, particularly from the United States and its allies. In the 1960s, North Korea began its pursuit of nuclear technology, aided by its Soviet allies. Kim believed that nuclear weapons would grant North Korea leverage in negotiations and increase its international stature. Despite global opposition, North Korea's nuclear ambitions steadily advanced. In 2006, under the leadership of Kim Il-sung's son, Kim Jong-il, North Korea conducted its first nuclear test, becoming the first nation to openly defy the global non-proliferation regime. Subsequent tests conducted under both Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un have demonstrated significant advancements in the country's nuclear and missile capabilities. By 2017, North Korea claimed to have successfully tested a hydrogen bomb, solidifying its position as a nuclear power. North Korea's nuclear weapons program has been a major point of contention in international diplomacy. The United States, South Korea, Japan, and others have imposed heavy sanctions on North Korea in an attempt to curb its nuclear ambitions. However, these efforts have largely been ineffective as the North continues to expand its capabilities. The presence of nuclear weapons has made North Korea a particularly dangerous player in international politics, with the threat of nuclear warfare a constant concern for global leaders. This is compounded by North Korea's willingness to engage in provocative rhetoric and military posturing, often threatening preemptive strikes against its enemies. North Korea is infamous for its brutal human rights record. The regime has long been accused of widespread human rights abuses, including arbitrary detention, torture, forced labor, and executions. The government maintains tight control over its citizens through a pervasive surveillance system, with informants embedded in every facet of society. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of North Korea's human rights abuses is its network of political prison camps, known as Kwanlee-so. These camps are used to imprison individuals who are deemed enemies of the state. Conditions in the camps are horrific, with prisoners subjected to forced labor, torture, and inadequate food and medical care. It is estimated that as many as 200,000 people are held in these camps at any given time. North Korean citizens live under constant fear of being reported by family members, neighbors, or even strangers. The regime's grip on society is so tight that even the slightest hint of disloyalty can lead to arrest, torture, and death. In addition to the political prison camps, there are also re-education camps, where ordinary citizens who have been accused of minor infractions are forced to undergo brutal indoctrination sessions. The United Nations has repeatedly condemned North Korea for its human rights abuses, but the regime remains defiant, refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing and continuing to control its citizens with an iron fist. North Korea's regime has become one of the most feared in the world, not only because of its human rights abuses and its nuclear weapons program, but also because of its unpredictable and often irrational behavior. For decades, North Korea has maintained an aggressive stance toward both its neighbors and the international community. The country's leadership, especially under Kim Jong-un, has frequently made provocative statements and threatened to unleash nuclear war if its demands are not met. In recent years, Kim Jong-un has expanded his country's missile testing program, leading to concerns that North Korea could develop the capability to launch nuclear missiles as far as the United States mainland. The United States, South Korea, and Japan are particularly fearful of North Korea's potential for destabilizing the region. In response, the United States has maintained a strong military presence in South Korea, and the two countries regularly conduct joint military exercises to counter the threat posed by North Korea. The North, in turn, views these exercises as provocative and often retaliates with missile tests or hostile rhetoric. World leaders are also concerned about the possibility of North Korea engaging in cyber warfare, as the regime has been accused of carrying out a series of high-profile cyber attacks on international targets. These attacks, often attributed to the North Korean government, are part of the country's broader strategy of asymmetrical warfare, as it seeks to level the playing field against more powerful adversaries. China has long been North Korea's most important ally and trading partner. Despite occasional tensions, China has consistently supported North Korea's regime, providing it with economic aid, military support, and diplomatic cover at the United Nations. China fears that the collapse of North Korea would result in instability on its border, a massive influx of refugees, and the potential unification of Korea under a pro-Western democratic government. China's relationship with North Korea is complex. While it has been critical of North Korea's nuclear weapons program and occasionally imposed sanctions in line with United Nations resolutions, China remains committed to ensuring the survival of Kim Jong-un's regime. Beijing's primary concern is regional stability, and it has repeatedly called for dialogue and negotiation rather than confrontation. The Kim family has ruled North Korea for over 70 years, and its dynasty is one of the longest-lasting in modern history. The Kim family's hold on power has been solidified through a combination of fear, propaganda, and extreme repression. Kim Il-sung established a totalitarian regime that emphasized loyalty to the state, the leader, and the family dynasty. After Kim Il-sung's death in 1994, his son, Kim Jong-il, assumed power. Under his rule, North Korea became more isolated, and the country faced a devastating famine in the 1990s that led to the deaths of millions of people. Despite this, Kim Jong-il maintained a strong grip on power, focusing on the development of nuclear weapons and military might. Kim Jong-il's son, Kim Jong-un, assumed power in 2011 after his father's death. Kim Jong-un's leadership has continued the family's legacy of harsh repression and nuclear development. The Kim family's rule has been characterized by a relentless pursuit of control, both through the suppression of dissent and the maintenance of a strong military presence. The future of North Korea remains uncertain. While the regime remains stable for now, it faces numerous challenges, including economic stagnation, a lack of resources, and the possibility of internal unrest. The international community is divided on how to deal with North Korea's actions. Some call for stronger sanctions and increased pressure, while others advocate for diplomatic engagement. The North Korean people continue to suffer under one of the most brutal regimes in the world. But the question remains, will the Kim family dynasty continue to hold power, or will the country eventually face a reckoning? The global community will have to navigate this uncertain future carefully, as the potential for conflict, instability, or change is ever present. North Korea's horrors are not just a reflection of its brutal past, but also a chilling reminder of the present. From its nuclear weapons development to its widespread human rights abuses, North Korea remains one of the most feared and isolated countries on the planet. The country's history is marked by violence, oppression, and the unyielding grip of the Kim family. As long as this regime remains in power, the world will continue to watch, fearful of the consequences of North Korea's unpredictability and the challenges it poses to global security.